All right. I'm so excited because I believe that we have our guest with us. I'm hoping that we have our guest with us. I know you guys have been writing things in, and I'm going to be checking that out in just a second. But welcoming Becca Lory Hector. I wanted to make sure I got all three of the names right. I'm so thrilled that you're here with us. Welcome to the live show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited that you're here, and I want to start with talking about your double certification, the CAS and the BCCS. Would you explain to our viewers what those are?
Sure. So both of them come from IBCCES, which is a board credentialing site. And you basically do what other people do, and they do continuing education, which is you study and learn about the topics, and then you go ahead and take some tests and see if you qualify for the certification. So the CAS is a Certified Autism Specialist, and the BCCS is a board certified cognitive specialist, which opens me up away from just autism and into neurodiversity.
Which is wonderful. And so what kinds, I know that you are an advocate and that you are a speaker and a writer. And, I always, normally we have people, I get to chat with them just a little bit before we go on air. And I always say to them, if you want to self-identify, that is entirely up to you. I always like to be respectful and not identify anybody, but is there any way that you choose to self-identify?
I do. I identify as autistic.
And so, but my understanding is that you got your diagnosis a little bit later in life.
Yes, I definitely did.
How old were you when you got your diagnosis?
I was 36 years old when I got my diagnosis. I literally just turned 36. So that was going to be 8 years ago now. I'm about to turn 44.
Wow. Well, can I first of all say you don't look it?
Thank you. Autism gives us that too, they say.
I was going to say, I mean, come on, that's incredible. I want to talk a little bit about what it was like and why you sought out a diagnosis that was later, because I know we have a lot of people who watch the show who will write in and maybe they've got a kiddo that was identified as being on the spectrum, and they're like, as I'm finding out about this, I'm realizing I'm all the things that they're talking about, and they have questions about how do you go about getting a diagnosis later in life. I want to talk about that, but then let's not forget, I want to come back to the ways that you use those certifications to be able to do what you do. Yeah. But let's start with what made you seek out a diagnosis at that age?
Well, my life was not a pretty place at that time. I had pretty much struggled for as long as I can remember. It was given other names throughout my life. I was given many mental health diagnoses that didn't fit. But there was always trouble a-brewing kind of from when I was very, very young. And as I got older, the struggles, I had learned to cope and I've sort of learned to mask and all of these things, but the struggles really continued to show themselves in my employment history and my struggles in employment, which we now know is a fairly common thing that happens to folks on the spectrum. And so I was really struggling there, and it gets very, it beats you up a lot. Your self-esteem disappears. You no longer value yourself or think you have any worth over and over when that happens. So the very last job that I was doing, I had done 13 jobs in 15 years. And that very last job that I was doing, I hit a challenge point and I said, you know what, I'm done. I quit. I left that job, drove home from it to my mom's house, got into the bed that I grew up in, and didn't get out for 3 years. So from 33 years old to 36 years old, I had given up entirely on life. I had absolutely kind of just let go. I was in the house. I never left the house. And that was for 3 years solid. And I still say to this day, I most definitely should have been hospitalized. My mother didn't choose to do that for me, but at this point, I would say that I should have been hospitalized. My suicidal ideations were beyond ideation. I had plans and things like that. And so I was sort of sitting at that point. At the same time, I had always had migraines in my life, and they started to change a little bit. And so when your migraines change and you're somebody who no one could find the source for most of your life, you begin to worry about brain tumors and things like that. And so I did. I started to search on the internet while journaling about my migraines. I had a smell that nobody else could smell, and I was freaking out. So I went on to WebMD, which is of course where people start when they don't want to leave the house. And I looked through a bunch of stuff on there. I was looking at olfactory tumors, and I was looking at pituitary tumors. I was looking at hallucinations, and I was running through that, but it was too much medical jargon for me to get through it fast. So I said, all right, I'm going to go to the other source. And I went to Wikipedia, where everyone goes for their correct information. And I hopped on there and I was searching again through those same things. And at one point, I was just in that YouTube vortex of clicking and clicking and clicking. And I got to sensory processing disorder. And that was way familiar to me. It was like, wow, this is a thing, because I've always had this. I just thought this was a normal person thing, and everybody kind of had this. And so as I was reading that, at the bottom of that article, there was a link to Asperger's syndrome. And what I did was read that article, and I felt like I was reading my own biography. It gave me the chills. It felt like I was about to fall over on a roller coaster. I felt like somebody had been watching me my whole life. And so what I did was I took that link and I emailed it to my mom, which is the only way I knew how to verify anything. I waited those requisite 3 days for my mom to check her email, and I didn't want to bias her opinion. So she finally read it and came into my room and said, what do you want to do? Where do you want to go for this? You found it. You finally found it. And so that's how I went seeking a diagnosis. I was in that place in my life. And so I went to go seek it.
Wow, what an incredible story. What do you say to people who might be watching? You know, it's so interesting to me because autism is a spectrum. And I do believe that all of us have at least some of the different elements. You know, people will watch and go, oh, well, I sometimes have sensory issues. Does that mean that I'm on the spectrum? I find that it's a very interesting thing to help people to understand that, you know, you might have a sensory issue with one thing, but, you know, when it gets to the point where it's stopping you from doing the things that you want to do, what do you say to people to help them to understand that, you know, and to have the compassion of, you know, I get it that you might feel social anxiety too, but that it's at a different level.
Right. Well, I almost like it sometimes when people say that. I know other people get kind of irritated by that, but I really appreciate it, because it gives me the opportunity to say to people, well, yeah, autistics are human, so we're not having an inhuman experience when we're having sensory overwhelm, and it's the combination of all of those things, right? I don't just have social anxiety. I don't just have one of these things. I have to worry about my sensory and the social and the this and the that and all of that. And now I have to think about things that I didn't know about, didn't know they had names, like dysgraphia and alexithymia. And I have to think about all of that stuff at the same time. And so what I do is I say, I appreciate that you can understand that I'm having a human experience. But my human experience is different than your human experience. And I sort of go from there. I like to explain autism as the filter through which I see the world, right? It's sort of any information that I'm going out to get, or is coming into me, or I'm experiencing with other people, is coming through my brain through the lens of autism. That's it. All the time, 24/7. I don't get to take it off and wear it on some occasions and other times. But it's literally how my brain processes the information around me, right? And it's different than what we would call the neuromajority, right? It's different than what most people have, though we're seeing our numbers continue to grow. But that's what I say to people, because it is, we are human beings. We do have those same human feelings.
I love that.
Space.
I love that answer. But you know, people looking at you now, and it's 8 years later, and I know people are going to go, wow, you know, you seem so capable. You seem like so intelligent, so articulate, like, you know, and it would be easy to say that your life is this ginormous success right now. We're all being forced to be at home right now. So, you know, but tell us a little bit about how your life has changed, and if getting the diagnosis helped you.
Okay, well, the diagnosis didn't just help me. The diagnosis saved my life. I'm very realistic about that. When you are someone who is experiencing suicidal ideations and suicidal thoughts to the point that you have a plan, you're real close. And so when I got that diagnosis, it was this little spark of hope in a life that had been so incredibly difficult for me, and for people around me some of the time, I guess. And so it was like, wait a second, if this is a thing, there's a moment that I could have hope. And in that moment of hope, what I ended up seeing was my realistic choices, because I can't ever take off my logical autistic brain. And so I processed everything through that. And I looked at the scenario and I said, well, I have two choices, right? There's a fork in the road right now. And I could go down one way and I could say, I'm disabled. Nobody knew I was disabled my whole life. How could nobody help me? I'm going to be disabled for the rest of my life. I give up, right? Or I could have said, well, maybe this bit of information about myself can help me to fix the things that I'm struggling with and make my life so that I like it and I enjoy it, and I want to be here for it. And if that's possible, I want to do that. And then if I chose that path and it went wrong, I always had option A to go back to, right? I could always do the whole I give up plan. And so that's what I did. I chose the what I deemed the logical choice, which was to explore the information that was available to me. And that's exactly what I did. I just spent the first year post-diagnosis, I spent going to weekly therapy. That was pretty much all I was focused on, was understanding the autism itself and also understanding what it means in my life and for me and my struggles and my challenges. And so really learning to pick that apart, putting all the new names that I had, all the new vocabulary that I had to the experiences that I've been having, matching that up. And about, most of the way through that year, I kind of was feeling much better and I was feeling healthier and empowered, and so much better that I wanted to give back to the organizations that had sent me to the place where I got a diagnosis and where I got my therapist and all of that. So I did. And that's sort of how I got into nonprofit. I started out as a volunteer, was very quickly hired, and I just love the autism community. So I've stayed there, and it became, my diagnosis not only saved my life, but it's now become a career for me, right? And it's now my life's passion. So it's been a lot of things for me. It's been a lot, but I know that it saved my life. But the other part of your question, which is I get often about how I can present this way, right, but still be autistic when they're looking at their children, and how can that be? And the simple answer to that is, well, when you were 4 years old, did you look like you look now, right?
Yeah.
No. Did you behave like you behave now? No. You didn't call it the ladies' room. You called it the potty, and you didn't do, right? You changed, right? You grew up. And it's the same for autistic people, right? I'm not presenting now at 44 the way I presented at 2 or 6 or 8, right? So, if they saw me then, maybe that opinion would be different. Maybe they would have more obviously seen my autism before I learned to mask it and I learned to cope, and I learned to push through. I don't know. What I know is that those challenges, the ones that I have, existed in my baby book from my mother. I know that. I've seen it in writing, right? I know I've done the test, and I know that piece. And because I am and I exist, it must be a possibility because here I am, right? And so I kind of, I look at it like that. Was I always a wordy person? Yes. Was I always, I was hyperlexic, hyperverbal, always as a kid? Definitely. Was I articulate? Nah, not till I got older. You know what I mean? And that's me. Really, that's the reality. We have a developmental delay, which may mean that sometimes we present a little bit younger than you're guessing for our age, but we're still developing. So we are going to change, and everybody's going to change, and nobody knows how their kids are going to turn out,
Yeah, I love that. But would you go back and tell us about the organization, where you got diagnosed, and where you got, and what kind of therapist you were using? Because I know everybody's writing in wanting to know that.
This is a great one, because as adults, right, it's all different. A lot of the things that you would be testing for and asking about and questioning and looking for behaviors of don't really exist in adults, and especially don't exist in adults who have learned to hide themselves their entire life. So it's hard to see that, right? I have managed to learn how to fake eye contact really, really well, right? And so many doctors that have no experience in autism would say, well, you make eye contact, you can't have autism, right? I was definitely denied a diagnosis most of my life because I'm speaking, right? I'm speaking, so I can't be autistic. I'm also a girl, so I can't be autistic, right? Everything was kind of piled against me growing up. But when I kind of reached the place at 36, I was lucky enough that the world had gotten far enough that there was a place to go for autistic adults. If I had gotten there a couple of years earlier, I don't know that I would have found that. What in particular, what I needed was somebody who had experience with adult females, as adult females really present very differently than adult males on the spectrum. And we also are just very good chameleons. And it's such an ingrained habit for us that it's almost hard for us to drop it, even when presented in a situation while we're looking for diagnostics, for example. So I ended up, I'm lucky enough, I was born and raised in New York City. So I was in an area that was very highly populated with doctors and physicians and professionals of all kinds on the East Coast. And the first one that I found was an organization called AANE, and they are based out of Boston. And I was in New York, so I thought, okay, well, I will drive wherever to go get this correct diagnosis. So I called there, and they very nicely referred me to a very local organization to me. And I had called there, and I was referred to a specialist not too far from me that specialized in adult female diagnosis.
Wow.
So I went to that person, and I got diagnosed. I like to tell people at this time, if you sit down with a professional and within the first 45 minutes, they tell you, no, you can't be autistic because you make eye contact. No, you can't be autistic because of whatever, your pants are black. No, you can't be autistic for whatever reason. Nobody should be diagnosed in 45 minutes. So I would leave that office immediately and look for somebody else. It should take about 6 to 8 weeks to get a proper diagnosis. There's a lot of testing and scoring of the testing, and then the professional has to write up their results. So it takes a while to get it. And so that's really important to know as well. So I was lucky enough to do that. And then after that year, I went back to that same small organization, which is AHANY, which is now they're partnered with AANE. They are part of the same organization, but that's where I started working. So I was working in that nonprofit.
Wow. I mean, I just love, I love hearing you talk, Becca. This is very exciting. But we're running out of time. I want to make sure that people who are enjoying hearing what you have to say get more of you. So let's talk briefly about like your website and the things that you're doing and how we can connect with you.
Okay. So now I'm a couple of years out of working for nonprofit. I wanted to step out on my own without a mission statement on my back for a while. So I'm now a consultant, and you can go to my website and you can see all the things that I do because I put it all in one place. So my website is beccalory.com, and you can head there and you can see all the exciting things that I do. You can see some of my writing is on there as well. But what I'm really excited about these days that I'm doing is I'm doing a couple of things that are sort of newish, and that I'm excited because they're growing. So I started out with a Facebook and LinkedIn group called Neurodiversity Newsstand. And it was a place where we could all get together and peacefully and kindly share the news that was going on in our community and discuss it with each other. Popular enough that folks wanted more. And so what I did was I created a YouTube channel, and on Fridays, I do what's called Neurodiversity Newsstand, the vlog. And I just sum up the news of neurodiversity from the week for those of us that are too busy to read all of it. So the popular articles and things like that, I share people's blogs, events that are going on. It's all about sharing and cheering on what's going on in the community. And then from there, I decided to do a live stream weekly, which I now do on Tuesdays. So if you head to my YouTube channel, you can sign up for those things and subscribe there. Also started a newsletter this past 2 months ago, I guess. The new one is about to come out tomorrow morning. So if you head to my website, you can sign up for my newsletter as well. It's a motivational newsletter with a theme in the month that I pick, and I kind of just group together resources around that theme. So this month's theme is authentically living. So that'll be coming out tomorrow. And very lastly, but most importantly, because everything got canceled for April, because all of my speaking engagements are gone, because any conferences you guys would be going to are gone, I'm taking to the internet. I'm going to be doing my keynote speech that I would be giving anywhere you would have seen me, which is the self-defined living, creating a life you don't need a vacation from. It's my attempt at autistic personal development, and I will be doing it I'm going to be doing it as a webinar off my website, which you can go up there and go ahead and register for it. It's going to be on April 18th at 4 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, which is my time. It's going to run an hour of the presentation, and then I'm doing a live Q&A afterwards. So if you come to the original recording of it, you will get to ask questions in the live Q&A.
Wow. I mean, it's a lot. And I want to go back a little bit because, so to go to your website, it's Becca Lory. I'm sorry, I'm leaving you without me there. I'm clicking my camera on. There we go. So like I'm being rude and I didn't mean to be. So Becca Lory, if you would spell that for people so that we make sure we get it right.
So it's
yeah.
BECCALORY.com.
Okay, wonderful.
Everything I talked about is there, so you don't have to go any further than that.
Right, that's the place to go. And the webinar is on the 18th of April, so you want to sign up to do that. But also, you know, the things. What time is the live feed that you're doing today?
Today's live stream I do at 2:20 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. It's a really informal kind of thing. I wanted it to feel like a support group for those of us that show up, right? Hard to do one when everybody's in chat and it's like this. But what I do is I try to pick something to talk about that either we can get to know each other better and kind of bond over what we enjoy together or laugh about or struggle with. Or I am working on a particular piece of advice that I might want to share in that group and then make kind of the theme around it. I only do 20 minutes because I don't think people watch much longer than that these days. So I really stick to Neurodiversity Newsstand, and my live stream are always about 20 minutes, a little bit longer if it's a good topic.
Now, I'm going to ask the question because I know it's going to come up. That is for individuals who are self-identifying as being on the spectrum.
Anybody. I mean, I learned a lot while I was dealing with autism and learning about it, enough to know that because it's a human condition, the problems that we come up with and the solutions to those problems are human problems and human solutions. So anybody can really benefit from what I'm
All right, I'm just asking because a lot of times parents, well-meaning parents,
come to me, parents, really.
Oh, good, because
I don't,
they're going to want to, Becca.
I'm happy for that because I wish that somebody was around for my mom to say, you're doing right, you're doing the best that you can, or here's some advice that worked for me, or have you looked at it this way? I know my mom would have benefited from that. And so I think about all those moms and dads out there. And so if you want to email me directly, my email is info@beccalory.com. And if you're a parent and you have like a single question, you'd like a resource on, something like that, I am open to your emails. You are not alone out there. You're not floating, right? Well, autistic adults speak because we want you to hear, because we want your kids to have a better time at everything.
Thank you for that, because I think, you know, I have, being a parent myself of somebody who was diagnosed at 2.5, the first 8 years, all I wanted to do was to hear people like you who are having a life and have figured some things out. I wanted to hear what it is like for you. I wanted to hear that hope that someone can. Right. And then as I got, you know, it was interesting that maybe 8 years I was searching those folks out. Then, you know, it just ended up being that I turned around one day and realized that a large portion of my friends are individuals that are on the spectrum. And I was like, oh, like that just happened somehow, but it enriches my life so fully as a parent. But I also have met many individuals who rightly find that autism parents can be annoying.
Right. Well, there are, look, humans are humans. There are some autistics that I find annoying. Okay. I don't have to like everybody, none of that. And so I find that to be a foolish thing. You know, you can, if a toxic person is a toxic person, autistic or not. So if that person kind of comes into your boundary space, that's up to you to push them away. And you don't have to kind of participate in that. But I refuse to kind of close out all the other people that just want the information, right? I would be doing a disservice to my community at that point.
Well, thank you for that. And I just want to clarify, by annoying, I meant I've watched my son go through this. My son sometimes speaks. And after we were at an event one time, there was a dad who was just loving talking to him. And he was talking to my son and he was just mystified because he had a little boy who wasn't speaking, and to hear my son speak, and my son hadn't been speaking, he was just so excited. But at one point he was looking at my son, he was like, so do you have friends?
Right.
And my son, his response, he was like, yes, do you?
Right.
And why are we talking this way? You know, and
Right.
like you know, he had the appropriate response, and the dad was immediately like, oh, I'm so sorry, what am I doing? But it was this very, I mean, annoying like
And
that.
right. And it happens, we call it infantilization, right? And it's part of the reason many adults don't disclose, because when you disclose, immediately people change their tone of voice and they lean in closer, right? And it's demeaning. And especially when you're an adult and you're a business owner or whatever, you're all of these other things, right? So I don't like to lead with that foot with people, but I will talk about it when I kind of test the waters with them, just because I need to protect my own being, you know, I have to protect myself. But I think, you know, people do that. There's a bigger problem, right? People do that behavior because we have a bigger problem, which is that nobody is seeing autistic adults.
Yeah.
So if nobody's seeing autistic adults, how do you as a parent say, well, one day my kid could be what? What? I don't know, because I can't see my kid as an adult. So my kid is always going to be a kid. And so we live into that loop. And then the other piece of it is that those kids also don't have mentors to look up to. They're not looking up and saying, here is the adult I could be. Right.
Yes.
And so what
Yes.
I try to do is give visibility to that. Look, am I perfect? No. Do I have challenges? Yes. You know, am I like, you know, I have my own struggles. I'm not perfect. And my autism still gets in the way sometimes, and that stuff still happens. But I want other kids out there to know, like when they're looking through books and who they can look up to, that they can find autistic role models.
And I love that. We're way past time, but I do want to, because I promised people that we would talk about your cat. Because there's a picture of you with the cat, and I promised them that I would make sure that they got to know the name of the cat, which I absolutely love.
Okay,
Please tell us about your cat.
That particular cat is named Kira. She is my only domestic short hair. I have 5 other cats, and they are all Maine Coon mixes. And then I have 2 barn cats under my house that keep the mice away also. So I have a total of 8 in my life. And this is a lifelong special interest. This is what it looks like, right? So I've always loved cats. I've always been an animal person. I have 4 dogs. I have 2 snakes. I'm just an animal person, right? And that special interest has carried through my entire life. It's my rock. It's the thing that I look to for support, right? My animals, I have emotional support animals. That's right. And so when parents want to take away the special interest and they want to kind of limit it, you can't, right? Because that kid's then going to sneak around and do it anyway, because it's the thing that's regulating you. It's the thing you can rely on. And it serves an important purpose in our lives. And so here I am as an adult, and I told everybody when I was 4, I never wanted to have kids. I just want to have lots of cats and lots of dogs. And here I am at 44 with no kids and lots of cats and lots of dogs, right?
But somebody is named, is it a dog or a cat who's named Sir Winston Underfoot?
Oh, that's Walter. As I have a
Walter.
Winston, who is my black cat, but Walter is my emotional support animal. So he's the dog that travels with me, and all of that. And he's a giant hound mix that I got from a shelter, and I trained him myself. And he travels with me. And yeah, he's Sir Walter Underfoot. And he has his own Instagram because everybody loves him so much. So you can go at Sir Walter Underfoot, and you can take a look at him and his crew hanging out around the house.
I had a friend who had a dog who was named Walter, and now she has a dog whose name is Sirloin. That is his name. And I immediately thought of you when I saw Sir Walter Underfoot, and I was like, oh, you two would be friends. Sirloin. And he does posts on Instagram and on Facebook. Sirloin does. Awesome. Hilarious. But let's say again that your website is Becca, BECCA, Lorry, LORY.com. Yep. And that everything that you do, that you've talked about, they can connect with you through that. Let's encourage people. Go check that out. We are hopelessly out of time, but Becca, this has been so much fun. I wish we'd had more time to talk about more about the 2 certifications and what you do, but people can find that. And I would love to have you back whenever you have time.
Yeah, let me know. I'd be happy to come back. Absolutely.
Hey, thanks for watching Autism Live. To subscribe, click here. And if you'd like to check out some more of our videos, click here.